My sister called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice shaking as she begged for help with what she called a one-night emergency. I said yes because that's what family does, right? But by the end of that week, I'd find her rearranging my pantry like she owned the place, her husband changing my Wi-Fi password, and handwritten notes plastered across my walls claiming, "This is our home too." What started as a simple favor turned into a hostile takeover of my entire life, and the moment I discovered what they'd been whispering about me in my own hallway, I knew I had a choice to make. Sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones who test your boundaries the most, and I was about to learn exactly how far I was willing to go to protect my peace. If you're watching this video right now, drop a comment telling me where you're from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories. The call came on a Tuesday evening, right as I was settling into my favorite spot on the couch with a glass of wine. My phone buzzed, and when I saw Lena's name flash across the screen, something in my stomach tightened. We hadn't spoken in almost 3 months, not since our last argument about money she'd borrowed and never repaid. "Lily, oh my God, Lily, you have to help us." Her voice was shaky, breathless, like she'd been running. "There's a gas leak at our apartment complex. They're evacuating everyone right now. The kids are scared, and we have nowhere to go. Please, we just need one night. Just one night until they fix it." I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Every instinct told me to say no, to protect the peace I'd worked so hard to build in my life. But she was my sister. Despite everything, despite the years of boundary violations and broken promises, I still believed in helping family. "Okay," I heard myself say. "One night. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could ask any questions, before I could set any ground rules. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across my living room window. I watched from behind the curtain as Lena's beat-up sedan pulled into my driveway. The doors opened, and out came Lena, her husband Marcus, their 2 kids, and an alarming amount of luggage. 6 massive suitcases. 2 duffel bags. A box of toys. Marcus made 3 trips back to the car, hauling bag after bag toward my front door. I opened it with what I hoped was a welcoming smile, though my brain was screaming warnings. "That's a lot of stuff for one night," I said, trying to keep my tone light. Lena laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, you know how kids are. They need their stuffed animals, their favorite blankets, extra clothes in case someone spills something." She bustled past me into the house, Marcus following with the last of the bags. "Where should we put everything?" Within the first hour, I knew something was off. Lena's kids, Tyler and Emma, tore through my living room like tiny tornadoes. Goldfish crackers scattered across my cream carpet. Juice boxes leaked onto my coffee table. A trail of toys marked their path from the entryway to the kitchen to the den. Lena barely glanced at the chaos, her eyes scanning my home with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Wow, Lily," she said, running her hand along my granite countertop. "You've got so much space here. It feels like a real home, you know? Not like those cramped apartment boxes." She turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're so lucky." I forced myself to smile back, telling myself it was just an offhand remark. Later, I would understand it was the first sign of what was coming. Marcus wandered through my house like he was conducting an inspection. I found him in my garage, opening drawers in my tool chest, examining my lawn equipment, running his fingers along the workbench I'd built last summer. "Nice setup you've got here," he said when he noticed me watching. "Must be great living in a place like this. Really makes you appreciate what you've worked for, huh?" The way he said it made my skin prickle. He didn't sound admiring. He sounded calculating, like he was mentally appraising everything he saw. I forced an awkward laugh and suggested we all get settled for the evening. As the night wore on, and we prepared for bed, Lena made another request. "Hey, do you mind if we use the guest room and the kids sleep in your spare bedroom? They sleep better when they're separated. Emma kicks, and Tyler talks in his sleep. It would just be easier." I hesitated, my hand on the linen closet door. The spare bedroom was my creative space, my sanctuary, filled with books and my grandmother's antique desk. But I told myself it was only for one night. One night wouldn't hurt. Sure, I said. Let me just clear some things out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house seemed amplified. Every footstep overhead made me tense. Around midnight, I heard voices in the hallway, whispering. I crept to my bedroom door and pressed my ear against it. Better school's here, Marcus was saying, his voice low. And she's got no mortgage payment eating up half her income. Finally, some stability for the kids. My heart started pounding. What did he mean, stability here? They were leaving tomorrow. This was temporary. Just one night. I climbed back into bed, but sleep didn't come. I stared at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Lena in my kitchen, rearranging my pantry. All my canned goods were lined up by size. My spices were alphabetized. My cereal boxes were stacked in a different cabinet entirely. What are you doing? The words came out sharper than I intended. Lena turned with a bright smile. Oh, I hope you don't mind. I woke up early and couldn't sleep, so I thought I'd make myself useful. Your system was a little chaotic, so I organized it to be more functional. Don't you love it? I stood there, staring at my completely rearranged pantry, feeling violated in a way I couldn't quite articulate. This wasn't her house. She had no right to change things. But she was already moving on, pulling eggs from the refrigerator, acting like she'd done me some great favor. Thanks, I managed, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. At breakfast, Lena dropped the next bomb. So, the apartment complex called this morning. The gas leak repairs are going to take longer than expected. She sipped her coffee casually, not meeting my eyes. They said maybe a few more days. I hope that's okay. A few more days? I set down my fork. Did they say how many days exactly? They weren't specific. You know how these things go. Red tape, permits, safety inspections. She waved her hand vaguely. Did you talk to your landlord directly? What did they tell you? Oh, I didn't speak to him personally. It was just a text update to all residents. She pulled out her phone, scrolling. Here, see? She showed me a screenshot of a generic message about building maintenance. No mention of gas leaks. No emergency language. Nothing that suggested residents had been evacuated. Something cold settled in my chest. I excused myself and went to my bedroom, closing the door firmly. My hands shook slightly as I pulled up the apartment complex's website and found their main number. Park Vista Apartments, how can I help you? The receptionist sounded cheerful. Hi, I'm calling about the gas leak evacuation yesterday. My sister and her family live in Building C, and I wanted to check on the repair timeline. Gas leak. The woman paused. Ma'am, we haven't had any gas leaks recently. Certainly no evacuations. What unit is your sister in? I gave her Lena's apartment number. Let me check our system. Keyboard clicks filled the silence. That unit shows as active. No emergency reports filed.
No maintenance requests.
Is there something specific you're concerned about? My throat felt tight.
No.
No, I must have misunderstood. Thank you. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, trying to process what I'd just learned. Lena had lied. Completely, deliberately lied. There was no gas leak. No emergency. No legitimate reason they'd shown up at my door. I opened my home security app, the one I'd installed last year after a rash of break-ins in the neighborhood. I'd barely used it since, but now I turned on every motion alert, enabled recording on all devices, and made sure the cloud storage was active. I didn't confront Lena.
Not yet.
I needed to see how far she would take this lie, how deep her deception went. Some instinct told me to gather evidence first, to document everything before making my move. I didn't have to wait long. The morning after my phone call to the apartment complex, something shifted. Lena and Marcus moved through my house with a new kind of ease, a casual ownership that made my teeth clench. They used my coffee machine without asking, leaving grounds scattered on the counter. They grabbed my towels from the linen closet like they'd lived here for years. I heard Marcus in my shower using my expensive shampoo, the one I splurged on every few months as a treat to myself. I came home from a quick grocery run to find Lena, wearing my bathrobe, the soft gray one I'd bought myself last Christmas. She was curled up on my couch, my slippers on her feet, scrolling through her phone. Lena, that's my robe. She glanced up, completely unbothered. Oh, I couldn't find mine in all the bags.
Hope you don't mind.
It's so comfy. She stretched like a cat, settling deeper into the cushions. You have great taste. I stood there, grocery bags cutting into my palms, fury building in my chest. But I swallowed it down, set the bags on the counter, and walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. That afternoon, I heard a crash from the living room. I rushed in to find my grandmother's ceramic vase in pieces on the floor, the one she'd made in her pottery class 40 years ago, the one I'd cherished since she passed. Emma stood nearby, wide-eyed, a soccer ball at her feet. I'm so sorry, Emma whispered, tears starting to form. It's okay, sweetie, I said gently, kneeling down. Accidents happen. But Lena just laughed from the kitchen doorway. Oh, please, Lily, it was just decor. You can get another vase anywhere. Don't make Emma feel bad over some old pottery. Just decor.
Just some old pottery.
I gathered the pieces carefully, each shard a fragment of my grandmother's memory, and carried them to my bedroom. I sat on my bed, holding the broken ceramic, and let myself cry quietly where no one could see. The next violation came during my work meeting. I was presenting to a client when my screen froze, then went black. Connection lost. I tried to reconnect, but the Wi-Fi showed as unavailable. Password incorrect. I tried 3 more times before grabbing my phone to hotspot, apologizing profusely to my bewildered client. After the meeting, I found Marcus in the living room. Did something happen to the Wi-Fi? He looked up from his laptop with a slight smirk. Oh yeah, the kids were having trouble connecting, so I updated the password. Made it more secure. I'll text it to you later. This is my house. My internet. You can't just change the password. He shrugged. Too late now. Like I said, I'll send it to you. He never did. I had to call my internet provider and reset everything myself, wasting an hour on hold and troubleshooting. When I came back downstairs, Marcus was still working on his laptop, using my internet in my house, like nothing had happened. That evening, I was working late in my home office when Lena appeared in the doorway. Hey, just so you know, we're implementing quiet hours from 8 p.m. on. The kids need their sleep, and Tyler's been cranky because of all the noise.
Ich zerrte her.
Quiet hours? In my house. Well, yeah. We're all living here now, so we need some ground rules, right? It's just considerate. She said it so reasonably, like it made perfect sense for her to impose rules on me in my own home. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. I took 3 deep breaths, choosing not to escalate in that moment. But inside, something was breaking. Over the next few days, things started disappearing. My fancy French lavender soap from the guest bathroom. My favorite night cream that cost $60 and was supposed to last me 3 months. A delicate silver bracelet my best friend gave me for my 30th birthday. 2 bottles of expensive wine from my collection, the ones I was saving for special occasions. Lena, have you seen my bracelet? The silver one with a tiny compass charm? Nope, haven't seen it. Maybe you misplaced it. But I knew I hadn't. I checked my security camera footage, scrolling through hours of recording until I found it. 2 in the morning, Marcus creeping through my living room, opening drawers in my console table, pocketing items, checking over his shoulder. My stomach turned watching him rifle through my personal belongings like he was shopping. Then came the lock incident. I tried to enter the guest room to retrieve some extra blankets, and the door wouldn't open. The handle turned, but something was blocking it. I knocked. Just a minute. Lena called out. When she finally opened the door, I noticed immediately. Did you change the lock? Oh, yeah. We needed privacy. You understand, right? Boundaries and all that. She smiled sweetly. We can't have people just walking in whenever they want. The hypocrisy was stunning. They'd invaded every aspect of my life, violated every boundary I had, and now they were talking to me about privacy and boundaries. The breaking point came on Thursday. I got home from work around 6, exhausted from a difficult day, looking forward to a quiet evening. Instead, I walked into absolute chaos. My backyard was full of people, at least 14 adults I'd never seen before, plus their kids. Someone had pulled out my grill and was cooking burgers. Music blasted from a Bluetooth speaker. People were in my pool, drinking my alcohol, sprawled across my patio furniture. Lena waved from the deck, a wine glass in her hand. "Hey, hope you don't mind. We invited some friends over for a little get-together." She was wearing one of my sundresses, I realized with fresh horror. I stood frozen, watching strangers make themselves at home in my backyard, eating my food, drinking my drinks, swimming in my pool. This wasn't just crossing a line anymore. This was complete disrespect. I waited until most of the guests had left, then cornered Lena in the kitchen. "We need to talk.
Now."
"What's wrong?" She had the audacity to look confused. "What's wrong?" "Lena, it's been almost a week. The gas leak story was a lie. You're rearranging my house, using my things, throwing parties, changing locks.
This ends now.
You need to leave." Her expression hardened instantly. "Leave? Are you seriously going to kick out your own family? We're settled here, Lily. The kids are comfortable. We're your sister's family. You lied to me to get into my house. I needed help, and you had space. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to be honest." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "You were supposed to stay one night and leave." Lena folded her arms across her chest, her jaw set in that stubborn way I remembered from childhood. "We're not leaving. We have nowhere else to go, and you're not heartless enough to throw us out. I know you, Lily. You won't do it." Something in me snapped. I turned and walked to my bedroom, my whole body shaking with rage and betrayal. I locked the door and sank onto my bed, pulling up my security app with trembling fingers. I scrolled back through the footage, watching days of recordings. And then I found it. The very first day, while I was at the grocery store getting food to feed them. Lena and Marcus in my kitchen, whispering urgently. "Hurry, move everything in before she gets back," Lena hissed. "Once we're inside and settled, she won't remove us. She's too soft. She'll cave." Marcus grinned. "This place is perfect. Way better than that dump apartment. The kids can actually have space here. Just act grateful and pathetic for a few days until she gets used to us being here. Then it'll feel normal, and she won't push back." I watched the entire exchange, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't an emergency. This wasn't bad luck or a misunderstanding. This was a calculated plan to take over my home, executed deliberately from the very first moment. I saved the footage, backed it up to 3 different locations, and sat in the quiet darkness of my room. Now I had proof. Now I had documentation. Now I had everything I needed. And I was done playing nice. The next morning, I made a call I should have made days ago. This time, I asked for the property manager directly. "Park Vista Apartments, this is David speaking." "Hi, David. I'm calling about a tenant in Building C, Unit 217. Lena Martinson. I'm her sister, and she told me she was evacuated due to a gas leak last week. I'm trying to verify the situation." There was a long pause. "Ma'am, I can't discuss tenant information with non-residents, but I can tell you we haven't had any gas leaks. As for Unit 217, he hesitated. That unit is currently listed as non-compliant with lease terms." "What does that mean?" "It means the tenant was evicted for non-payment of rent and property damage. The eviction was finalized last Tuesday." My hand tightened around my phone. Last Tuesday. The same day she showed up at my house. I can't confirm personal details, but the timeline sounds about right for that unit. "I'm sorry you were pulled into this situation." I thanked him and hung up, then immediately set my phone to record and called him back, asking the same questions. This time, I captured every word for documentation. Lena hadn't just lied about a gas leak. She'd been evicted and had deliberately used me as her backup plan. That afternoon, I met my friend Rachel for coffee. She'd been my roommate in law school before she'd moved into corporate law, and I trusted her judgment completely. "So let me get this straight," she said after I'd explained everything. "They lied to get into your house, they're refusing to leave, and they've caused property damage and stolen from you."
Yes.
And I have video evidence of all of it. Rachel leaned back, processing. Okay, here's the good news. Because they entered under false pretenses and have overstayed without your permission, this is trespassing, not a tenant situation. You don't have to go through a lengthy eviction process. With your documentation, you can legally have them removed. Relief flooded through me. Really? Really? Keep gathering evidence. Document every damage, every theft, every violation. Then file a report with the sheriff's office. With video proof of them admitting they planned this, you have a solid case. I went home with renewed purpose. I installed additional small cameras in common areas, angled to capture conversations and movements without being obvious. And I caught exactly what I needed. Marcus, talking to someone on his phone in my living room. She's too soft. She'll let us stay forever. By the time she works up the courage to kick us out, we'll have tenant rights. Lena, laughing with a friend in my kitchen. Honestly, give me a month and this place will feel like ours. She barely uses half the space anyway. I captured it all. Every smug comment. Every entitled assumption. Every piece of evidence I needed. That evening, one of the kids let something slip. I was helping Emma find her stuffed rabbit when she said innocently, "Mommy says this is our new home now. She said you have too much space for just one person anyway, so now we get to share." My chest tightened. Even the children had been told this was permanent. This wasn't improvisation. This was a plan Lena had put in motion before she ever called me that first night. The next violation made my blood run cold. I found Lena's iPad left open on the kitchen counter, and the screen showed my banking statements. My personal, private financial information, pulled up and displayed. When I confronted her, she didn't even look embarrassed. "I was just checking to see if you could afford a second car. We're going to need one if we're staying here, and I figured you'd want to help. You accessed my financial information without permission. It was open on your computer. I was just looking."
No, Lena.
"You went into my locked office and opened my personal files." I grabbed the iPad. "This ends. All of it." But she just smiled, that infuriating, condescending smile that said she still thought she held all the power. That night, I reviewed more camera footage and found something even worse. Lena, talking to her friends during that backyard party. "If she forces us out, we'll play the victim. Tell everyone she kicked out her own sister and nibblings when they had nowhere to go. She can't risk looking heartless to the whole family." They'd already planned their defense. Already calculated how to manipulate me through guilt and family pressure. It was all a game to them, and I was just a pawn. I started documenting the property damage with obsessive detail. Scratches on the hardwood floors where they'd dragged furniture. Scuff marks on the walls. A broken curtain rod in the guest room. Cracked tiles in the bathroom where something heavy had been dropped. Water damage on the windowsill where someone had left the window open during a rainstorm. I photographed everything with timestamps, took measurements, got repair estimates. The contractor's assessment made me sick. Nearly $11,000 in damages. $11,000 they'd caused in just over a week. The final straw came over dinner. I'd made pasta, trying to keep some semblance of normalcy while I executed my plan. Lena criticized the meal, saying I should have made something the kids would actually eat. Then she added, almost casually, "You know, you should really be more hospitable. You have all this space, no real family obligations, and we're struggling. The least you could do is make us feel welcome. No real family obligations." As if my life, my work, my existence meant nothing because I didn't have children. As if I owed her my home, my peace, my everything simply because she'd made different choices. I set down my fork very carefully, my hands steady despite the rage coursing through me. "Excuse me." I walked to my bedroom, closed the door, and let out a long, shaky breath. Then I became very, very calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've finally made a decision you should have made days ago. I called the sheriff's office non-emergency line. "I need to report a trespassing situation with video evidence." I spent an hour on the phone, explaining everything methodically. The lies they told to gain entry. The refusal to leave. The property damage.
The theft.
the attempted access to my financial information. I sent over the video files, the timestamps, the documentation. The officer reviewed everything and finally said, "Ma'am, this is one of the clearest cases I've seen. You have more than enough evidence. We can facilitate a legal removal within 48 hours. 48 hours, I repeated, the words tasting like victory. Yes, ma'am. I'll email you the documentation you need to serve. Keep recording, don't engage in arguments, and call us if the situation escalates." I thanked him and hung up. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe fully. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. The war had officially begun, and this time, I was going to win. I spent that night preparing, printing documents, organizing evidence files, and planning every step of what came next. When I came downstairs the next morning, Lena immediately sensed something had changed. "You're quiet," she said, watching me pour coffee. I didn't answer. I didn't engage. I simply took my coffee to the living room and started reviewing messages on my phone. My silence unsettled her more than any argument could have. Throughout the day, I stopped providing information. When Lena asked what time I'd be home, I said I wasn't sure. When Marcus asked about plans for the weekend, I shrugged and said I hadn't decided. I gave them nothing to work with, no insight into my thoughts or movements. I heard Lena whisper to Marcus in the hallway, "Why is she being so weird? Something's off."
Good.
Let them worry. Let them feel the shift in power they'd taken for granted. While they were out at the grocery store that afternoon, I went into action. I methodically packed their belongings into boxes and plastic bins, labeling everything clearly. Clothes, toys, toiletries, all of it went into organized containers that I stacked neatly in the garage. I worked quickly, efficiently, documenting everything with photos so they couldn't claim I'd damaged or stolen anything. When they returned, Lena dropped her grocery bags on the floor. "What are you doing? Why is our stuff in boxes?" I looked up calmly from the bin I was labeling. Preparing. Preparing for what? You'll see. Her face went pale. Marcus started to say something, but I cut him off. "I'm not discussing this right now. Your things are being organized. That's all you need to know." That evening, I called my internet provider and had them walk me through a complete network reset. New router password, new admin access, new network name. When Marcus tried to connect to work, his laptop couldn't find the Wi-Fi. What happened to the internet? I have a deadline. I glanced up from my own laptop, connected and working perfectly. Technical issues. You'll need to figure out your own solution. Just give me the password.
No.
The word hung in the air, simple and final. Marcus stared at me, mouth open, clearly shocked that I'd refused him something so directly. This is ridiculous. I need to work. Then go to a coffee shop. Or the library. But you're not using my internet anymore. Next came the access codes. I changed the garage door code, rendering their automatic opener useless. I had a locksmith come out and change the front door lock, pocketing the new keys myself. I removed the key they'd somehow acquired to the guest bedroom door. Every entry point, every access method, I systematically locked them out of. Lena tried the garage that evening and found it wouldn't open. She tried her key copy on the front door, and it didn't work. I watched through the window as frustration built on her face, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The next morning, I had a visitor. Deputy Marshal Torres arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, as scheduled. I'd asked him to come for a formal walkthrough, and he spent an hour reviewing my documentation and touring the property. We went through the video evidence together, frame by frame. "Ma'am, you've been incredibly thorough," he said. "This is actually one of the best documented cases I've reviewed. The footage of them discussing their plan to take over your home is particularly damning. You have more than enough for a legal removal order." "How quickly can this happen?" "I can process the paperwork today. You'll be able to serve them with a 48-hour notice. If they refuse to comply, we'll return with additional officers to facilitate the removal." After he left, Lena cornered me in the kitchen. Her eyes were red, makeup smeared like she'd been crying. "Lily, please.
We need to talk about this.
We're family. You can't just kick us out." I met her gaze steadily. You broke into my home under false pretenses. You lied, stole, damaged my property, and tried to manipulate me into letting you stay. Family doesn't do that, Lena. We had nowhere else to go. You were evicted for not paying rent. That's not my emergency. That's a consequence of your choices. So, you're just going to throw us onto the street? Your own sister and her children? I'm enforcing my legal right to my own home. Something I should have done the first day. She tried tears. She tried anger. She tried guilt. None of it worked anymore. I'd seen behind the curtain. I knew exactly what she was doing, and I refused to be manipulated any longer. That afternoon, I handed her the official 48-hour notice to vacate, printed on legal letterhead and properly formatted. Lena's hands shook as she read it. Then she exploded. You can't do this. We have rights. You can't just throw us out. Actually, I can. You entered under false pretenses, you have no lease, no rental agreement, and you've been here less than 2 weeks. This is my home, and you're trespassing. Marcus stormed in from the backyard. This is insane. You're ruining our lives over what? Some broken dishes and hurt feelings. Over theft, property damage, fraud, and attempted financial interference. I pulled out my tablet. Would you like to see the footage? I played the video I'd captured that first day. Their voices filled the kitchen. Hurry, move everything in before she gets back. Once we're inside and settled, she won't remove us. Lena's face lost all color. The kids stood in the doorway, confused and scared. Marcus stammered, trying to form words, but finding none that would help. This was your plan from the beginning, I said quietly. You were evicted, so you made up a story, manipulated me, and tried to steal my home. Every single day, you pushed further, testing how much you could take. Deputy Torres stepped back into the kitchen, appearing from where he'd been waiting in the living room. You have 48 hours to vacate this property. Failure to comply will result in forcible removal and potential criminal charges for trespassing and theft. Do you understand? Lena opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. This isn't over. You're going to regret this. But Torres just handed her a copy of the official documentation. The countdown begins now. I suggest you use your time wisely. As he left, I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw her clearly for the first time in years. Not as family. Not as someone I owed anything. But as someone who'd tried to rob me of my peace, my safety, and my home. 48 hours, Lena. And then you're gone. The eviction had officially begun, and there was no going back. I woke up the next morning expecting chaos, but what I found was something far more disturbing. Handwritten notes were plastered everywhere. On my refrigerator, taped to my bathroom mirror, stuck to the living room wall. Each one written in Lena's dramatic, looping handwriting. This is our home too. Family doesn't abandon family. We deserve to be here. In the hallway, the kids had drawn pictures with crayons, labeling rooms with their names. Mommy's room. Emma's space. Our house. It was psychological warfare disguised as children's art, and I saw right through it. I photographed every single note, every drawing, documenting the manipulation before I carefully peeled them all down and threw them in the trash. If Lena thought guilt would work now, she was more deluded than I'd realized. By mid-morning, my phone started ringing. First my Aunt Carol, then my cousin Jennifer, then my Uncle Paul. Lena had been busy making calls, spinning her story, painting herself as the victim of my cruelty. How could you throw your own sister out? Aunt Carol demanded. She has children, Lily. I could have argued. I could have defended myself. Instead, I simply texted them all the same thing, a link to the security footage. The video of Lena and Marcus planning their takeover, whispering about how I was too soft to stop them, how they'd manipulate me into letting them stay. The phone calls stopped within minutes. The family group chat, which had been blowing up with messages condemning me, went completely silent. One by one, relatives sent private apologies, embarrassed they'd believed Lena's lies without question. But the war at home was just beginning. Marcus started slamming cabinets, stomping through the house with heavy footsteps, making his presence as loud and aggressive as possible. He muttered insults under his breath when I walked by, just loud enough for me to hear. Thinks she's better than everyone. Cold-hearted. Selfish witch. When he deliberately blocked my path in the hallway, standing there with his arms crossed like he was daring me to challenge him, I pulled out my phone and started recording. You're blocking my way in my own home. Move. He didn't budge, just stared at me with contempt. I kept recording, kept my voice calm and clear. This is the third time you've deliberately blocked me. I'm documenting this as intimidation. Move, or I'm calling the deputy. He finally stepped aside with a sneer, but I had it all on video. Every instance of aggression, every attempt at intimidation, all captured and time-stamped. That afternoon, my phone rang again. Lena, her voice hysterical. Lily, oh my God. You need to come home right now. There's water everywhere. The house is flooding. I think a pipe burst. My heart jumped for just a second before logic kicked in. I opened my security app and checked the live feeds. Every room looked perfectly normal. Dry floors. No water. Nothing. Lena, I'm looking at the cameras right now. The house is fine. Silence. Then, you're checking the cameras?
Yes.
And I've documented this false emergency call. Stop trying to manipulate me. I hung up and added the incident to my evidence file. Another attempt at control, another failed manipulation tactic. The next day, I started restricting their access to my home systematically. I cleared out the extra shelf space I'd given them in the refrigerator, packing their food into a single shelf. I moved their toiletries from my bathroom into a single plastic bin. I stopped sharing my pantry items, my cleaning supplies, my anything. When Lena tried to use my washer, she found I'd installed a combination lock on the laundry room door. Are you serious right now? How are we supposed to do laundry? Laundromat. Or you could leave as instructed and do it wherever you end up living. You're punishing us.
No, Lena.
I'm preparing you for the reality that this isn't your home and never was. Each small restriction chipped away at the illusion of permanence they'd built. No more borrowing chargers. No more using my streaming accounts. No more helping themselves to my snacks or drinks. Every privilege revoked, one by one, until they were living like strangers in someone else's house. Which is exactly what they were. That evening, something unexpected happened. Emma, Lena's daughter, found me in my home office. She was holding her stuffed rabbit, her eyes big and worried. Auntie Lily, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetie. Are we leaving because Mommy lied? My heart cracked a little. I knelt down to her level, choosing my words carefully. You're leaving because adults need to take responsibility for their choices and fix their mistakes. This is my home, and I need my space back. But that's not your fault, Emma. None of this is your fault. She nodded slowly, processing. Mommy said you don't want us here because you don't like kids. That's not true. I think you and Tyler are wonderful, but sometimes adults make decisions that affect kids, and that's hard. Your mom and I need to work some things out. I heard footsteps and looked up to see Lena standing in the hallway, her face contorted with rage at being caught in another lie. But for once, she didn't explode. She'd seen the expression on her daughter's face, the dawning understanding that maybe, just maybe, Mommy wasn't telling the truth about everything. The guilt was finally reaching her, even if she'd never admit it out loud. The next morning, Lena tried one final desperation move. She sat me down at the kitchen table, tears streaming down her face in what I recognized as her performance cry, the one she'd perfected as a teenager to get out of trouble. Lily, please listen. We lost our apartment because you refused to help us when we asked months ago. Remember? I called you, told you we were struggling, and you said no. This is partially your fault. You could have prevented this. I stared at her, genuinely amazed at her ability to rewrite history. You called me asking to borrow $3,000 for a vacation to Florida. I said no because you owed me money from the last time. That has nothing to do with you getting evicted for not paying rent. If you'd helped us then, we wouldn't have fallen behind. I pulled out my phone and played another recording. Her landlord's voice filled the kitchen, The tenant was 4 months behind on rent and caused significant property damage, including unauthorized modifications and— Stop. Lena's hand shot out like she could physically block the truth. Just stop. But the truth was already out there, documented and undeniable. Every lie she'd told, every manipulation she'd attempted, all of it was crumbling around her. That's when I brought in the final piece of my plan. I'd contacted a child services liaison through my lawyer friend, not to report Lena for abuse, but to get professional guidance on how to handle the situation with the kids involved. The liaison agreed to make a welfare check and speak with Lena. When the woman arrived, professional and calm, Lena's face went white as a sheet. They spoke privately for 20 minutes while I waited in the living room. When they emerged, the liaison pulled me aside. I've advised Ms. Martinson that using her children as emotional leverage or involving them in adult conflicts could result in additional interventions. I've also provided her with resources for family counseling and housing assistance. To Lena, she said firmly, your children are not tools to manipulate your sister. They deserve stability, and that means you taking responsibility for securing appropriate housing. Do you understand? Lena nodded, tears running down her face, but these weren't performance tears anymore. These were real, because her last shield had just been removed. Over the next 24 hours, I watched the fight drain out of them. Boxes that had been unpacked were slowly, reluctantly, packed again. Lena moved through the house like a ghost, folding clothes with shaking hands. Marcus stopped slamming things, stopped making aggressive comments, just worked in angry silence to organize their belongings. The children sat quietly on the couch, watching cartoons, their earlier excitement about the new house replaced with confused sadness. I made them snacks, helped them pack their favorite toys, and tried to shield them from the worst of the adult conflict. With 12 hours left on the notice, Deputy Torres returned for a check-in. He walked through the house, noted the packed boxes, and gave Lena and Marcus a final warning. Time's almost up. I suggest you finish packing and arrange your transportation. If you're not out by tomorrow morning, additional officers will arrive to ensure removal. Lena looked at me then, really looked at me, with an expression mixing anger, shame, and disbelief. You're really doing this. You're actually going through with it. I met her gaze steadily.
No, Lena.
You did this. You lied, you manipulated, you tried to steal my home. All I'm doing is protecting what's mine. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, something that might change my mind or wound me one last time. But no words came, because we both knew the truth. The deadline arrived on a Thursday morning, cold and overcast. Deputy Torres appeared at 9 o'clock sharp, accompanied by another officer. They were professional, polite, and absolutely firm. Ma'am, sir. Torres addressed Lena and Marcus. It's time to vacate the premises. Do you need assistance carrying items to your vehicle? Marcus tried one last time to argue, pulling up something on his phone like he'd found a legal loophole. Actually, according to what I read, squatters' rights in this state. Torres cut him off immediately. Sir, squatters' rights require occupation of an abandoned property, typically for years, with the owner's knowledge. This is an occupied residence. You've been here less than 2 weeks, and the owner has explicitly demanded you leave. That statute doesn't apply. You need to exit the property now. This is ridiculous. We have nowhere to go. That's not a legal basis to remain in someone else's home. You have 10 minutes to gather any remaining items and leave voluntarily, or we'll proceed with removal. The threat of being physically escorted out finally broke through Marcus's bravado. He grabbed the last 2 boxes and headed for the door, muttering curses under his breath. Lena collapsed onto the couch, her whole body shaking with sobs. Not the performative crying from before, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that came from genuine despair. I have nothing left. Nothing. No home, no money, nowhere to go. A small part of me, the part that remembered our childhood, that remembered braiding each other's hair and sharing secrets, wanted to comfort her. But then I remembered the footage of her gleefully planning my downfall, remembered her mocking my kindness as weakness, and that sympathy evaporated. You have exactly what you created for yourself, Lena. These are consequences. As they loaded the last boxes into their car, Emma and Tyler approached me hesitantly. Tyler, who is only 6, handed me a drawing he'd made. It was a picture of my house with a big heart over it and the words "Auntie's home," written in crayon. "Thank you for letting us stay," he whispered. "You're not mean like Mommy said." Emma added softly, "We're sorry about the mess and breaking your stuff." I knelt down and hugged them both. "You two are not the problem, okay? You're good kids. I hope everything gets better for you." They nodded, eyes full of confusion and sadness they were too young to fully process. Then Lena called them sharply, and they ran to the car. As they prepared to leave, I noticed a box partially hidden under the guest room bed. I pulled it out and opened it, then froze. Inside was my silver bracelet, my missing wine bottles, my jewelry pouch, a spare key to my house that I'd never given them. Everything they'd stolen, hidden away like a treasure trove of my possessions. I carried the box outside where Deputy Torres was standing. "I found this hidden in their room. It's all my stolen property." He photographed the items and made a note in his report. "Would you like to press charges for theft?" I looked at the kids sitting in the back seat of the car, their faces pressed against the window.
No.
"Just get them out of here." Marcus got in the driver's seat, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Lena sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, her face streaked with tears and makeup. Neither of them looked at me. Torres handed me the final documentation. "The eviction has been executed lawfully and completely. If they attempt to return, call us immediately. You did everything by the book, ma'am. This is how it's supposed to work." I watched their car pull out of my driveway, watched it disappear down the street, and felt something shift in my chest. Not quite relief yet. More like the first full breath after being underwater too long. A neighbor, Mrs. Patterson from across the street, walked over as the officers were leaving. She was in her 70s, had lived in the neighborhood for decades, and rarely interfered in anyone's business. "I'm glad you got them out," she said quietly. "I saw them having that party in your backyard while you were at work. Saw them bringing in more boxes, every day. I even recorded some of it on my doorbell camera, in case you needed extra proof." "You recorded them?" "Of course. You're a good person, Lily. I've known you for years. When I saw what was happening, I wanted to help however I could." She patted my arm. "If you need anything, let me know." After everyone left, I stood in my entryway, surrounded by silence for the first time in 2 weeks. The house felt bigger somehow, emptier, but in a good way. Like I could finally breathe fully in every room. I walked through each space, taking inventory of the damage left behind. The guest bedroom walls had scuffs from furniture being dragged. The bathroom had a crack in the tile where something heavy had been dropped. The hardwood floors in the hallway were scratched. In the kitchen, cabinet hinges were loose from being yanked open too hard. But they were gone. My space was mine again. And I would repair every damaged piece until no trace of their invasion remained. The first few days after they left felt surreal, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept expecting Lena to show up at my door with some new emergency, some new crisis that would pull me back into her chaos. But she didn't come. What came instead was information. Lena's landlord, David, called me 2 days after the eviction. "Ms. Hartwell, I wanted to reach out because your sister left our property in terrible condition. There's about $5,000 in damages beyond the security deposit. I'm pursuing legal action, but I thought you should know the full scope of what happened here." He sent me photos. Holes punched in walls. Carpet stained and torn. Appliances broken. A bathtub with a massive crack from something being dropped. It wasn't just neglect, it was destruction. "How long did this build up?" I asked. "Started about 6 months ago. She stopped paying rent, stopped responding to notices. We tried to work with her, gave her extensions, offered payment plans. She ignored everything until we had no choice but to file for eviction." So Lena had been spiraling for half a year, making increasingly bad decisions, refusing help that required accountability, until she finally manufactured a crisis she could weaponize to invade my life. Over the next week, extended family members reached out with their own stories. My cousin told me Lena had asked to move in with her last year and had been refused because something felt off about how she asked. An uncle mentioned lending Lena money that was never repaid. Aunt Carol admitted that Lena had tried to guilt her into co-signing a loan. The pattern was clear. I wasn't Lena's first target. I was just the one who had the space she wanted and the softness she thought she could exploit. One relative, my mom's sister Janet, called with something that shook me. "Lily, honey, I need to tell you something. Lena has always been jealous of you. Even when you were kids, she resented that things seemed to come easier for you, school, friends, jobs. She told me once that you didn't deserve what you had because you were just lucky." I should have said something sooner. I sat with that revelation, remembering childhood moments through a new lens. Times when Lena had accidentally broken my things. Times when she'd sabotaged my friendships with lies. Times when she'd taken credit for my work or blamed me for her mistakes. It wasn't new behavior. It was a lifelong pattern I'd been making excuses for. Then came the financial reckoning. My homeowner's insurance agreed to cover about 60% of the repair costs, but I was still on the hook for nearly $4,000 out of pocket. I hired contractors to fix the floors, patch the walls, replace the broken tile, repair the cabinet hinges, and restore everything to its original condition. Watching the work being done was therapeutic in its own way. Each repair erased a piece of their presence, replaced chaos with order, violation with restoration. While cleaning out the guest room completely, preparing it for the contractors, I found an old photo album that Lena must have taken from storage and left behind. It was full of pictures from our childhood, birthday parties, family vacations, school events. I sat on the floor, flipping through pages, and cried for the first time since they'd left. Not because I missed them, but because I was mourning the sister I'd always wanted Lena to be, the relationship I'd kept hoping would materialize if I just tried hard enough, sacrificed enough, forgave enough. That sister didn't exist. Maybe she never had. 2 weeks after the eviction, I got a call from a social services worker. "Ms. Hartwell? I'm following up on a case involving minor children who were recently displaced. Your name came up in the file. The children mentioned feeling safer at your residence than at their previous apartment." My chest tightened. "Are they okay?" "They're in temporary housing with their mother. The father was recently arrested on outstanding warrants, unpaid fines, identity theft charges, possession of stolen mail. The mother is attending mandatory counseling as part of the housing assistance program." Identity theft? Stolen mail? I can't share details, but yes. It appears there were multiple legal issues the family was facing that predated their stay with you. So Marcus had been involved in criminal activity that Lena either knew about or ignored. Another layer of instability and dysfunction I'd unknowingly let into my home. Another reason I should be grateful they were gone. 3 weeks post-eviction, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Lena. I almost deleted it without listening, but something made me play it. Her voice was shaky, quiet. "Lily,
I'm sorry.
Sort of. I'm sorry things got so messed up. But you still didn't have to humiliate me like that, throwing us out with the police there, making me feel like a criminal in front of my kids. You could have handled it differently. You have to know that." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from her, which is to say, it wasn't an apology at all. Just another attempt to shift blame, to make herself the victim, to avoid taking full responsibility for her choices. I saved the voicemail as one final piece of documentation, then blocked her number. That evening, I made a decision. I couldn't raise Lena's kids or fix her life, but I could make sure they had some support. I set up a small savings account in their names and arranged for quarterly contributions. When they turned 18, they'd each have a few $1,000s to help them start their lives, something Lena never provided for me or herself. It wasn't about Lena. It was about 2 innocent kids who'd been caught in their mother's dysfunction. But I also set strict boundaries. No direct contact with Lena. No invitations to family events if she was there. No lending money, no offering housing, no bending to guilt trips. I wrote these boundaries down, shared them with trusted family members, and committed to enforcing them. The repairs took 6 weeks total. When the contractors finished, I walked through my restored home with something close to wonder. New floors gleaming. Fresh paint covering every scuff. New fixtures replacing what had been broken. It looked better than before they'd arrived. A complete renewal. I sat on my porch that evening, the same spot where I'd sat so many times during the chaos, but this time with a cup of tea and actual peace. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, waved from across the street. A jogger passed by with their dog. The sun set slowly, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. For the first time in what felt like forever, my home felt like mine again. Not just in the legal sense, but in the deep, spiritual sense of a space that reflected who I was and what I valued. I would never ignore red flags from family again. I would never sacrifice my boundaries for the illusion of loyalty. I would never again confuse enabling with love. And that felt like freedom. The first thing I did after everything was settled was upgrade my security system. Not because I was afraid Lena would come back. The legal documentation made it clear that trespassing would result in immediate arrest, but because I wanted to feel empowered in my own space. New cameras with better resolution. Smart locks on every door. A gate security system for the driveway. Motion sensor lights around the perimeter. My home became a fortress, but one that I controlled completely. It wasn't about fear. It was about choice. About never again being caught off guard by someone I should have been able to trust. I also started therapy. My first session, I barely made it 5 minutes before breaking down completely. I don't know why I let it go so far, I sobbed. I should have kicked them out the first day. My therapist, Dr. Chun, waited until I'd calmed down before responding. You've spent your entire life being trained to sacrifice your needs for family harmony. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. But here's what I want you to understand. Lena didn't take advantage of you once. She's been doing it your entire life. This was just the biggest, most visible example. Those words unlocked something in me. Memories flooded back. Every time I'd covered for Lena's mistakes. Every time I'd loaned her money, I never got back. Every time I'd put my own needs aside to keep the peace. It had never been a two-way relationship. I'd been the giver, and she'd been the taker, for as long as I could remember. So, what do I do now? I asked. Now you practice boundaries. You practice saying no without guilt. You practice putting yourself first sometimes. And you forgive yourself for not knowing sooner what you know now. Over the following months, I started reconnecting with friends I'd distanced during the chaos. People I'd been too embarrassed to invite over, too stressed to meet for coffee, too overwhelmed to maintain real connections with. My best friend Sarah hugged me so tightly when we finally met up that I couldn't breathe. I knew something was wrong. I'm so glad you're okay. I should have called you sooner. You're calling now. That's what matters. We spent hours catching up, and I told her everything, the lies, the manipulation, the eviction, all of it. She listened without judgment, just supportive presence and validation that I'd done the right thing. You know what's amazing, she said. You're different. Lighter. Like some weight you've been carrying forever is finally gone. She was right. I felt it too. A lightness I couldn't remember ever experiencing before. 2 months after the eviction, I received another message from Lena. She'd created a new number to get around my block. Lily, I need your help. Marcus is gone. I'm trying to get a rental, but no landlord will accept me without a cosigner. You're all I have. Please. Just this one thing, and I'll never ask for anything again. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling the old pull of guilt and obligation. The old version of me would have at least considered it, would have felt responsible for her situation, would have agonized over saying no. But I wasn't that person anymore. I typed back. No, Lena. You're all you have. But you can rebuild, just not through me. Don't contact me again. Then I blocked the new number and asked my phone company to set up filters for any future attempts. Dr. Chin smiled when I told her about it in our next session. How did it feel to say no? Scary. But also powerful. Like I was finally choosing myself. That's exactly what you were doing. And that's healthy. A week later, a surprise arrived in my mailbox, a check from my insurance company. They'd approved most of my repair claims, and with the detailed video evidence I'd provided, the reimbursement was larger than expected. My meticulous preparation, all those hours of documentation, had paid off in a tangible way. I used part of the money to finish the renovations I'd been planning before Lena arrived. The spare bedroom became the creative studio I'd always dreamed of, a reading nook, a desk for writing, shelves for my book collection, a comfortable chair by the window. A space that was entirely mine, reflecting my interests and needs. Taking back that room felt symbolic. It had been the space Lena invaded first, the boundary she'd crossed most aggressively. Now it was transformed into something beautiful, something that represented my growth and healing. The kids sent me something unexpected one afternoon, a drawing that arrived via their school counselor, who Lena had apparently been required to work with. It showed my house with hearts around it and the words, "Annie's home. Thank you for keeping us safe." I cried when I saw it, the good kind of tears that came from knowing the kids understood, at some level, that I hadn't abandoned them. I just refused to enable their mother's destructive patterns. I had the drawing framed and hung it in my studio, a reminder that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's still right. My neighbors started including me in block parties and barbecues, events I'd avoided during the chaos. Mrs. Patterson told everyone about how I'd handled the situation, and instead of judgment, I found support and solidarity. "You'd be amazed how many of us have family members like that," one neighbor confessed. "People who see your success and think they're entitled to a piece of it. Good for you for protecting yourself." The community I'd been too embarrassed to face during the crisis welcomed me back without hesitation. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I just hadn't let myself see it. 4 months after the eviction, I hosted my first dinner party. 6 friends, good food, laughter that filled my restored home with joy instead of tension. Someone made a toast to Lily, who finally learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. You decide who comes through. We raised our glasses, and I felt something settle deep in my chest.
Peace.
Actual, genuine peace. That night, after everyone left and I was cleaning up, I decided to clear out the last of my old security footage. I'd backed everything up legally, but I didn't need to keep watching those painful moments anymore. As I scrolled through to mark files for deletion, I found one clip I'd never watched before. It was from late at night during their first week, time-stamped at 2 a.m. Lena, alone in my kitchen, illuminated by the refrigerator light. I almost deleted it without watching, but something made me press play. Lena stood there, staring out the window into my backyard, her expression sad and lost. Then she whispered to herself, so quietly the camera barely picked it up. "I wish she'd just love me the way she loves this house." My hand froze on the mouse. I replayed the clip, making sure I'd heard correctly. "I wish she'd just love me the way she loves this house." For the first time, I saw past the manipulation and entitlement to something deeper, a lifetime of jealousy rooted in feeling less than, in comparing our lives and finding herself lacking. The house wasn't really about the house. It was about everything the house represented: stability, success, independence. Things she wanted, but didn't know how to build for herself. It didn't excuse what she'd done. It didn't make the lying, stealing, and manipulation acceptable. But it helped me understand that Lena wasn't just a villain in my story. She was a broken person who'd chosen destruction over honesty, who'd weaponized her pain instead of healing it. I felt sadness for her, for the sister she could have been if she'd made different choices, if she'd asked for help instead of trying to take everything. But I also felt clarity. Her brokenness wasn't mine to fix. It never had been. I deleted the clip, not to hide from the truth, but as a symbolic closure. Whatever Lena's pain was, however deep her wounds ran, she had to be the one to heal them. I couldn't do it for her, no matter how much the old version of me wanted to try. I closed my laptop and walked outside into my backyard. The moon was bright, casting silver light across the grass. Everything was quiet, peaceful, mine. I thought about where I'd been 4 months ago, stressed, violated, powerless in my own home. And where I was now, healed, empowered, clear about my boundaries and worth. The journey had been painful, but it had taught me something invaluable. Family doesn't give anyone the right to destroy your peace. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst impulses. I went back inside, locked the door behind me, and climbed into my own bed in my own house in my own life that I'd fought to protect. For the first time in my entire relationship with Lena, I felt completely, genuinely free. And that freedom was worth everything. When someone you love mistakes your kindness for weakness, how do you draw the line without losing yourself in the process? If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life tales about family, boundaries, and the courage it takes to choose yourself.